السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So we continue from I number 230 to 235. So I number 230. So we discussed a little bit of it yesterday. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was speaking about divorce, if it's to happen, how to do it. And the second thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions is the breastfeeding of kids. And this is the beauty of Islam, is that every answer to whatever the question and concern is found in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no one can say that, I wasn't guided. There was no guide for me. The guide is in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us the book, Quran, and then the tafsir of the Quran. The greatest tafsir of the Quran is the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. Right. So everything, the solution to every problem will either be directly found in the book of Allah. If not in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will be found there, but if someone cannot clearly understand, then the tafsir of it, the explanation of it will be found in the life of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So two things are to be mentioned here. Number one is the duration of breastfeeding. According to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, the maximum is 2.5 years. So that's the maximum a woman can breastfeed her child. And the message of this ayah is after separation has taken place, um, the father cannot force the mother to breastfeed the child. This is something that Sharia has stipulated for the ease of both, and especially for the woman, that she cannot be forced. Although a mother, her her mother instincts don't allow her to do that, but it's just there as a law stipulated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third thing Allah mentions in these ayahs is the iddah of a widow, the mourning period of a widow, and that is 4 months and 10 days. And everything, what Islamically, the dates are counted as Islamic dates. So 4 months and 10 days according to the Hijri calendar. So that is the iddah of a widow, a woman whose husband has passed away. And the fourth thing is another uh, rule that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stipulated, is that when a woman is in her iddah, either the iddah of her divorce, the mourning period of her divorce, or the mourning period of her husband passing away, um, it is said or told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if someone wants to marry her, they should not send a clear message of marriage to a woman who is in iddah, because she is still mourning her husband, right, or her relationship. So it's disrespectful to clearly send a message like that. You can send it in different ways. Um, like how Rasulullah said to Miss Salama radiallahu anha, that recite this dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you with something better. So something like that. But it is now recommended to send a clear message of marriage, a proposal to a woman who is observing her iddah. Then from ayah number 236 uh, all the way till ayah number 242, again, some laws of talaq. We've already been over them yesterday, so no need to go in there again. The second thing Allah mentions is very important, is حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, look, safeguard your salat. The obligatory salahs that I have decreed for you, make sure that you safeguard them, meaning that you pray them on time, you observe your salah, you're consistent on your salah. And then he specifies one salah, was salat al-wusta, especially the middle salah. And majority of the scholars, they say that this refers to Salatul Asr. Um, and the reason for that is many reasons. Some say that because a person is really tired at that time of the day. So usually, Fajr, a person will wake up. Dhuhr, he's still a bit active, but Asr, he gets really tired because of his daily works and chores. So it is more possible that a person will miss that salah, meaning the most difficult salahs are Fajr and Isha, right? But a person who is consistent on his salahs, for him, the difficult salah is Asr, usually because of his schedule. So Allah is specifying this that look, don't miss Salatul Asr. And the message given from that is make sure that you're consistent on every single salah, no matter how difficult it is. And this is one thing that we need to focus on this Ramadan as well, is that we need to make sure that we are consistent on our salah. So anyway, Salatul Asr, and the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about Salatul Asr is that a person who misses his salah, it is as if his entire family has been destroyed. His wealth and his family has been destroyed. So Salatul Asr carries a lot of weight. And let me tell you something else, especially for evil eye and for magic, for jadoo. The four sunnahs before Salatul Asr are very effective in preventing the effect of evil eye and magic. So a person who is consistent on his four rakat sunnah before Salatul Asr, um, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect him from the effects of evil eyes and from the effects of magic. Second thing is that whenever there is a need, okay, be consistent on your four rakahs of Salatul Asr. The reason for that is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua for a person, um, that a person who is prays his four rakahs sunnah of Salatul Asr, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him. So when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua for a person, that may Allah have mercy on him, then all his affairs of dunya and akhirat will be taken care of. And I've seen this uh, with our scholars and elders of this ummah, the scholars that are living right now, that they're very consistent on their four rakahs of Sunnah of Salatul Asr. So that. The third thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions is He briefly mentions Salatul Khawf. Salatul Khawf is praying Salat in the state of fear, meaning in the state of war and battle. And this really shows us that how important Salat is. That during the times of war and battle, when it's difficult, when a person is running for his life, even at that time, salat is not something that you can miss. Even then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a procedure on how to pray salat. So just really puts things into perspective that how important salat is. And we leave salat for minor reasons, right? Like, I'm not feeling well, I'm just gonna miss my salat. I have a headache, I'll just miss my salat. I have a flight, I'm gonna miss my salat. You don't miss salat for these kind of things, right? You pray in whatever situation you can pray, but you never miss your salat. Uh, and this shows us the fifth thing, the fourth and fifth thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, which has been abrogated now. So this command was abrogated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after the verses of inheritance came down, is the instruction to leave a will for 1 year of provisions for a widow. So this was that when a person is sick or when he knows he's about to die, then he should leave a will in which it states that from his inheritance, 1 year of provisions will be provided for sorry, for the widow. And the reason for that was at the time of Jahiliyyah, time of ignorance, a widow was kept in complete isolation for 1 year. So if her husband died, she was locked in a room or in a house, and no one would come see her. Sometimes no one would even give food to her, right, for an entire year. And this was because they considered that as something bad, that a woman has been widowed, and if she's outside, then other women will be widowed because of her bad luck and her bad effect, right? Again, this tells us that before Islam there were no rights in terms of anything, and Deen in reality came in, gave rights to everyone, to women. And this is why I say to the sisters is don't get drowned into this sea of fitna that is outside. Don't get brainwashed. You are very, very special. Okay, don't let people misguide you. Don't let people brainwash you into saying that, well, Islam doesn't allow you to go outside. Islam doesn't let you work. Don't get brainwashed into that. You need to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you so much respect. right? For example, having a career or going to school or going to university, Islam does not forbid that. We need sisters and we need women to go to university. We need educated sisters and educated practicing Muslim women. We need that. But before all of that, understand the amount of respect that has been given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed paradise under your feet. And you are such a being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that until a man does not marry a woman, his deen will not be complete, right? You have been created for a much greater purpose than what the world is saying right now. Right? The world says that um, that why can't we earn money, why can't we work? You have been created for a much greater purpose than that, right? You have been entrusted with the future of this ummah, right? Men, on the other hand, have been given the responsibility of the present of this ummah. What does this mean? That a man has to make sure that his family has enough to eat. The man has to make sure that his family is getting food on the table with respect and with honor. The man has to make sure his wife has enough money to go for shopping. Right? That's the responsibility of a man. But women, on the other hand, have been given responsibility of the future of this ummah, that they have to raise people who will become leaders for this ummah, right? And imagine if you provide such an upbringing, the amount of direct deposits that will happen in your account. Imagine, right, how much that will be. Like right now, as I see the participants in this group chat, is 43 in this class. 43 people, including me, are studying Quran, right? And we are studying under the banner of Zainab Center, under the banner of Muli Ahmad Sab, right? Imagine the parents of Mulana Ahmad Sab, the amount of direct deposits they're getting in their bank account because of the tarbiyah they gave their child that became such a beacon of guidance for an entire ummah, right? Imagine the amount of hasanat and good deeds his parents will be getting. So that's what you need to understand, is that you have been given such a big responsibility by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have been given such huge respect and honor by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that what this world is telling you to do, it can never compete to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you to do. And I briefly mentioned this 2 days ago when I was answering a question, is that like read the Quran, read the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and try to understand how much Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved his daughters, his spiritual daughters. Every single woman of this ummah is the spiritual daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And that's what my teacher told me when I got married. He like, make sure you treat her nicely because on the day of Qiyamah you will have to stand in front of Allah and you have to stand in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So don't treat her daughter in a way where you will be embarrassed to stand in front of Rasulullah. But that's a whole other issue. But like the verses of a man, um, a man saying something about a woman, right? And those verses, when our teacher was explaining those verses, spreading rumors against Muslim women, and our teacher said that Islam is so strict about it. And I'm telling you this for you to understand that how special you are in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that if a man spreads a rumor about a woman, right? That this girl, she does this, or I saw her with a boy. In an Islamic government, he will be asked that what proof do you have, right? And the proof for this, for slandering a woman, is he needs to provide four witnesses who saw the act. So a girl coming out of a hotel room is not proof. A girl in a car with another boy is not proof. In Islam, that man needs to provide four witnesses. If that man cannot provide four witnesses, he will be lashed. Number one, 80 times. Number two, his testimony will never be accepted in an Islamic court after that. The reason being that you slandered a Muslim woman. How dare you slander a Muslim woman? Muslim women are very special. No one can slander a Muslim woman how you did, right? So the reason for telling you this is because there's this huge storm of feminism, of equality outside, right? And sometimes we get confused as well. Don't get confused. Know that you have been given so much respect by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you so much honor. in this world. There is no need for you to follow the same rat race, right? Um, I mentioned this many times before when I speak to sisters. I can tell you stories about Sahaba, right? Like how Sahaba were, but I wanted to tell you stories about modern day, so you can relate, so you can understand, right? Sheikh Saud al-Shuraim, the Imam of Haram, who just resigned recently, he was the Imam for 35 years in Makkah Mukarramah, in Baytullah, in Kaaba. His mother passed away, and he mentioned his mother from the member of Baytullah, and he was crying, meaning that you are so special that if you play your cards right, you can be mentioned from the member of Baytullah. Right? That's the level of respect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, right? And imagine that if tarbiyah is done properly, and if you give time properly, and your children become leaders of the Muslim Ummah, how happy you're gonna be. And how happy Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would be for you when he sees you on the day of judgment. So before Islam, it was really bad, in terms of women, right? And we have come back to that same environment now. Challenges are different, but again, the idea is the same. uh, don't let that get into your head. Islam has given you so much respect, okay? Islam treats you with so much honor. Don't don't get brainwashed, and inshallah we'll talk about that more. So what used to happen with the time of Jahiliyyah, that they used to be kept isolated. And hear this, that when the iddah was complete, meaning their iddah was 1 year, right? So when iddah was complete, they would take that woman and they would parade her um, uh, around the streets of that city, and they would throw camel filth at her, and this showed that she is out of that period of iddah. So to prevent that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that you need to specify 1 year of provisions for widows, right? But then later on, the laws of inheritance came, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abrogated these verses. Then from ayah number 243 all the way till ayah number 248, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about a nation, and such a nation that a plague hit that nation. So what happened there was, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking about his power, about his qudra. So a plague hit that nation, and many people stayed in that city, and many people they left that city. And the people who stayed in the city, they were killed because of that sickness, but the people who were outside the city, um, they were saved, they were protected because they were outside the city. So when they came back, they saw that everyone was dead. So they decided as a community that if this was to ever happen again, all of us would leave the city. The plague came back next year, the sickness came back next year, and everyone, they left the town, and they were staying in this field outside that town. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then sent two angels, and those two angels shouted mutu, and everyone was killed. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the idea behind this ayah is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides something, there is nothing that can protect you from that. Okay. And that this connects to the ayah, أينما تكونوا يدرككم الموت ولو كنتم في بروج مشيدة, that death will approach you even if you're at the tallest building. Right? Meaning that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees something for you, you can do whatever you want. Okay. If Allah has decreed that for you, there is nothing that can protect you from that. This is iman. Right? That iman is that, Allah, if you have decreed something, I cannot protect myself from it. Right? And if you have decided something for me, that is going to happen no matter what. So that is what happened with them. And these people, they were so large in number, and their corpses, they were there, the bodies were there, that no one could bury them because they were so large in number, right? And the bodies started uh, to bloat, and smell started to come, right? So people, they built a wall around these bodies. uh, so when they built a wall, those bodies were inside that, you would say, building. Was Hisqil alayhi salam, who was a prophet. He came, and when he saw the condition of this nation, that so many people died at once, he was shocked. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then told Hisqil, Hisqil, do you want to see a miracle? Do you want to see my power? Do you want to see my qudra? Hisqil said, yes, Allah, please show me a miracle. Please show me your might. Please show me your power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought all of them back to life. So this is a miracle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned with the lesson of Iman. and decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in these verses is about sadaqah, is about charity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that look, when you spend in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you much more in return. Man dhal ladhi yuqridu Allah qardan hasana. Qardan hasana here refers to a qard to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A loan to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah says when you give Allah a loan, meaning you are giving money to Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase so much for you that you won't be able to count. That is what this ayah means. When I was studying in Karachi, I mentioned this before that I was pretty close to Junaid Jamshed rahmatullah alayh. So one day I said to Junaid, I'm like, Junaid, I want to be like you. And this is right before he died. He died in, I think, 2016, right? Yeah, 2016 December. And this is right before he died. So he had come back from UK, and a month later he was coming to Canada, and he was in Karachi for that small amount of time. So I went to see him, and we were sitting, and I'm like to Junaid, I'm like, Junaid, I want to be like you. And he's like, what do you mean you want to be like me? And he's like, you're becoming an alim, you're much greater than me, you're much better than me. I'm like, no, I want to be like you in terms that you have such a business, right? It's business Junaid Jamshed for clothing. You know, if you don't know about Junaid Jamshed clothing, you need to recite Astaghfirullah. Everyone knows about Junaid Jamshed clothing, right? So everyone wears it, right? So I'm like, no, like the company that you have, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with so much that all you do is you travel for the sake of Allah. And that is what he would do. Junaid would be like, you call him one day, Junaid, where are you? I'm in Australia right now. Next day, where are you? I'm in Canada right now. Like, it's so difficult to see him. So I'm like, I want to be like you, that I have such a business that I don't have to worry about anything. And I can just travel the world for the deen of Allah. So Junaid Jamshed told me his whole story. He's like, it wasn't easy sacrificing for Allah. He's like, when I left music, I had everything, and I was eating food. And when he told me some of the things he had, I choked on my food. Like what he told me, the luxuries that he had. And then I asked him, I'm like, Junaid, if you had so much, why did you leave? What you have, I dream of it in my dreams. One is dreaming of it in your dream. What you had, I used to dream in my dreams. Why did you leave all of this? He pointed towards his heart and he said, Molisab, I had everything, but my heart was empty. There was this gap in my heart. So anyway, that's a long story. We'll discuss that sometime later. But when I asked him that I want to be like you in terms of business, he said that I started my first business and it went into a loss. And I had so much loss in it. Then I started another business, which is Junaid Jamshed, the clothing company. He said I went to Mufti Taqi Uthmani, and Mufti Taqi Uthmani told me that him and another partner, Mufti Sahab told them that make Allah your third partner in your business, and whatever profit you get, take out 2.5% and spend it for the sake of Allah. He said I started doing that, and he says now I don't even know where the money is coming from. He's like, we have businesses in so many places, shops in so many places that I don't even know where my money is coming from anymore. So the promise of Allah is true only when you act upon it with that iman that it is true, right? Um, Muhammad Kisab in Makkah, he gives a dars. And someone asked him once that in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that you drink Zamzam for whatever reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you that. I'm sick and I've been drinking Zamzam for 10 days and I'm not getting better. So Muhammad Kisab told him that you don't have iman in Allah. You have Zamzam, but at the same time you take Tylenol, thinking that if Zamzam doesn't give me shifa, Tylenol will give me shifa. This is not iman. It does not mean that we don't take medicine. What it means is that when we do something for the sake of Allah, thinking that we're going to get the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to have this firm yaqeen and iman in our heart that no matter what happens, Allah's promise is going to be true. So when you spend for Allah, it is impossible that Allah is not going to give you back multiplied more. Allah is going to give you back multiplied by more. It's just that when you give it for the sake of Allah, you need to give it in a way where you know in your heart that the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be true. And then from the final verses of Surah Baqarah, from ayah number 246 to the final verses of the second juz till the end of this juz, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about a story. And the story is the people of Bani Israel again. It says that after the time of Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, some other prophets came. The people of Bani Israel, they became corrupted in terms of their deen, in terms of their religion. So at the time of Prophet Musa, some of the people of Bani Israel, they were following the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but as time passed, they let go of the deen of Allah and they became corrupted. And when a nation leaves truth, when a nation stops acting upon the religion that has been sent by their prophet, what happens is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away the power from them. Meaning that if you look into the history of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after the death of Rasulullah, Muslims lived a golden era. Right, the time of Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and all those other Muslim empires, we lived a golden era, right? And that was a time when Muslims were practicing upon the deen the way that the Prophet ﷺ told us to practice upon the deen, right? We didn't have our own ideas. Now we have our own ideas, right? Everyone is a mufti. At that time, not everyone was a mufti, right? People would go to muftis to ask answers and questions, but they would act on the deen of Rasulullah ﷺ, how the Prophet told us to act on it, right? So when we were at that level of commitment to deen, we were living a golden era. But then what happened? Slowly, we started picking and choosing in deen. We started disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala openly. We started leaving out the sunnahs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam publicly and openly. Then what happened? Then we lost that power that we had. We lost that respect and honor that we had. We lost all our empires. The same thing happened with the people of Bani Israel. That uh, when they left their deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took away their respect and their honor and their power. And what happened because of that? What is happening with us? That other nations overpowered them. So they had a really perfect and natural way of life, obviously, the prophets that the life of the prophets. But what happened was other nations overtook them and other nations overtook their culture. So now uh, they were really sad, right? They're really upset. What do we do now? We lived a golden era and now we're overpowered by other nations. So they approached a prophet and they requested the prophet to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to appoint a prophet or a king that would lead them in jihad, in fight against the other nations. So they're like, we want someone who can lead us and who can help us get back our lost honor. And the Prophet told them that, look, you won't be able to fight. Your track record is so bad that whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you something, you showed ingratitude to Allah and you turned back on your promises. So even this promise that you're making, I will make dua to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will appoint a king or a prophet to you. But what's going to happen in return when this prophet comes is you're not going to fight. But they promised this prophet that, look, if there's a leader, if there's a king, then we will fight with him under his leadership. So that prophet made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appointed Talut as their leader. It says here, right? فَلَمَّا فَصَلَ طَالُوتُ بِالْجُنُودِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appointed Talut as their leader. But what happened with them was that they did not follow Talut, or they did not take him as their leader. And the reason why? Because he wasn't wealthy. They said that if he was really a king, he would be wealthy because kings are wealthy. So they weren't really following him or believing in him or following his leadership. So Talut said that, okay, I'm going to present a miracle by the will of Allah. And the miracle is that a trunk, a storage will come, and that will be carried by angels, and that will have the leftovers from the house of Musa and Harun alayhi salatu wasalam. The story behind this trunk is that after Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and Harun alayhi salam passed away, this trunk was left behind. And this trunk carried, some scholars say, two tablets of Daura, the cane of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, the turban of Harun alayhi salam. So what the people of Bani Israel would do is whenever they would fight, they would keep that trunk in front of them. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them victory. But when they started losing their battles, what happened was that one nation, they won the battle against them, and they took the trunk with them. So they lost this trunk. So Talut, he said, okay, if I bring this miracle, will you believe in me? They said yes. So that trunk was brought by two angels, and these people then they started believing in Talut, and then they fought with Talut, and they eventually won that battle, and they restored their long lost respect and leadership. So this is the end of the second juz. Third juz, the first ayah from Tilka Rusulu Fadalla Ba'dahum ala Ba'd. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the prophets, and he says that we have given excellence to some prophets over the others. And this refers to the different ranks of Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam. For example, Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, he had a different rank, and Isa alayhi salatu wassalam had a different rank. And the best among the prophets was our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And from this we learn that he was the best of the prophets, and we are the best of the nations. So amongst all the prophets, he was the leader of the prophets, right? And amongst the nations of all the prophets, we are the leader of all the other nations. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here mentions that. Then from ayah number 254 all the way till ayah number 257. The first thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about is again spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, spending in charity. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he stresses on it by saying that min qabli an ya'tiya yawmun la bay'un fihi wala khullatun wala shafa'a, that spend from your wealth before such a day comes when there shall be no friendship and no intercession and no transaction. So he's referring to Yawm al-Qiyamah, that the day of judgment is going to be very severe, and accountability in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be very difficult. So to protect yourself from that, spend now. When you spend now, that will be investment for akhirat, and your journey in akhirah will become much, much easier. Then the next ayah is the famous Ayatul Kursi, in which the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are mentioned. And Ubay ibn Ka'ab radiallahu anhu, he says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him that, oh Ubay, do you know which verse that you have learned is the greatest? And he said that, Ya Rasulullah, you know better. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam repeated the question, and then Ubay radiallahu anhu said that it is Ayatul Kursi, to which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that may Allah bless you in your knowledge. The reason for this is because the virtues and the qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are mentioned in this verse. Allahu la ilaha illahu. Allah is such that beside him there is no deity. Al Hayy Al Qayyum, he is ever living. لا تأخذه لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Neither slumber nor sleep overcomes him. له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. To him belongs all that is in the heavens and in the earth. من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه. Who is there that can intercede with him without his permission. يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم. He knows what is before them and what is behind them. ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. Um, his knowledge ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء, meaning that he does not give knowledge, uh, no one has his knowledge except to whomever he wants to give it to. وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض. His throne encompasses the sky and the earth. ولا يؤوده حفظهما. And he never tires to preserve them, meaning he never gets tired. وهو العلي العظيم. He is the high, the tremendous. So the qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are mentioned in this verse. We all know the virtues of this verse, that when you recite this on something or someone, that someone or something comes under the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the ayah that everyone should memorize. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, this is a question that came yesterday, and I said that we're going to talk about it today, is there is no compulsion in deen. La ikraha fi deen. And sometimes it confuses us because we say that there is no compulsion in deen, but then, there is punishments for not praying salah. There is punishments for doing things that we want to do, and it doesn't really make sense to us, right? That why is it that Allah says that there is no forcing in deen, but then so many punishments are mentioned? The answer to that is, look, the compulsion is for someone to accept this deen. So no one is forced to accept the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when someone accepts the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have to fulfill the laws that have been laid down by Allah. Right? And the simple example is workplace. Uh, the workplace, like when you're not employed by a company, you don't have to show up for work at 8 a.m., right? When you're not employed by a company, you don't have to do whatever the boss is telling you to do, right? No one is going to force you to go and take a job in that company. But once you take a job in that company, you have to fulfill all your job requirements, right? You have to show up at 8 a.m. You have to do whatever the boss is telling you to do. If you don't do it, there will be consequences, right? Similarly, deen, no one is going to force you to enter the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But once you enter the deen of Allah, you have to follow the laws laid down by Allah. If you don't follow those laws and if you don't obey the commands of Allah, then there will be consequences. There will be punishments, right? So this is what we need to understand, that compulsion is in accepting the deen. But once you're in deen, then you have to follow the laws laid down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He guarantees us something. He says, Allahu waliyul ladina amanu yukhrijuhum min adh-dhulumati ila an-nur. That if you take Allah as your friend, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will become such a friend that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring you out of darkness into light. Meaning He will bring you out of the darkness of misguidance into the light of guidance. But if you take shaitan as your friend, what's going to happen? يُخْرِجُونَهُم مِّنَ النُّورِ إِلَى الظُّلُمَاتِ. That shaitan, when he becomes your friend, he's going to take you out of the light of guidance into the darkness of misguidance. And how does shaitan do that? Shaitan is very smart, okay? Shaitan is never going to tell you don't pray salah, like in the beginning. Shaitan is never going to tell you don't read your Quran. Shaitan is never going to tell you, okay, wake up today and after Fajr we're going to become an atheist. Shaitan will never tell you to do that. What Shaitan does is he goes slowly. He will bring riya into your heart. Riya is showing off, right? And you're reading Quran, and Shaitan will tell you that, look, uh, your friend does not read Quran, but you're reading Quran. You're better than him. You're praying Salah. Shaitan is going to tell you that, look, your family doesn't pray Salah, but you pray Salah. You're better than them, right? You know how, I don't know if you heard this, but someone was telling me this, that um, someone woke up for tahajjud and he was making dua to Allah that, Allah, look, everyone is sleeping in my house and I'm up and I'm talking to Allah. And his brother heard that, and his brother is like, do your ibadah if you want, but don't complain about us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So this is what shaitan does. That shaitan, he puts um, this riya in your heart, showing off, that in your heart you feel good. You should feel good of doing the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you should never belittle other people, even in your heart, when you're doing the ibadah of Allah. So this is where shaitan starts from, and then slowly what happens is you start missing your salah, and then you start missing your tilawah, and then start missing your zikr, and you start doubting your deen. It's a whole cycle. So Allah says that if you keep me as your friend, right, I'm not gonna leave you in not gonna leave you in darkness. I'm gonna take you out of darkness and bring you to light. And as for shaitan, he's gonna make sure that he takes you out of the light of hidayat and takes you into the darkness of misguidance. But the question is, how do I make Allah my friend? Right? To make Allah your friend, you need to put in an effort. You need to put in the effort of what we discussed, I think, 3 days ago, tazkiyah, of cleansing your heart. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love and the love of this dunya cannot be combined in the same heart. It's either going to be the love of Allah or it's going to be the love of this dunya. So you need to make an effort to take the love of dunya out of your heart and put in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When that happens, when you reach that level of ishq with Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will become your friend. Then you will become a wali. So the tazkiyah needs to be done. Okay, how can tazkiyah be done? Tazkiyah can be done through many different ways, right? Tazkiyah can be done, you know, by studying the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tazkiyah can be done by connecting yourself to a sheikh to someone who has crossed those levels of tazkiyah, right? And mashallah, for all of you, the best is Zainab Center, right? And I say this to sisters and to brothers who don't have time to go sit with someone physically and personally. The first is the priority is that if you can find someone who you can go to and sit with personally, but it's very difficult to do that right now, right? Because of schedule and because, especially for sisters, it's difficult for them to travel and all of that. Zainab Center is very good for this, for Taskiya, living in this part of the world. Um, when when I told my teachers about me teaching here, I cannot tell you how happy they were, and they had such good words to say about the center, Zainab Center, and about Maulana Ahmad Sab, the effort that he's doing. Ahmad Sab, he is the Khalifa of Maulana Zulfiqar Sab, the founder of this institute. He is the Khalifa of Maulana Zulfiqar. I've spent time with Maulana Zulfiqar while I was in Pakistan, and I cannot tell you what type of person he is. I was with him with one of my teachers, this and with him on the Zulfiqar Sab, there are few people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them such respect that there is this kind of awe in them. You know what awe is? Awe is, in Urdu we say robe, right? And you know how in some of the books of Sirah we read that there were very few people who could look the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his eyes. Many of the Sahaba, they could not look Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the eyes because of the awe the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had. I felt that with few of our scholars, namely one of them, Mulana Zulfikar Sahib. I spent so much time with him, just sitting with him in his gatherings. I had the blessed opportunity to ride with him in his car once. I could not look into the eyes of Mulana. I tried. Well, I was requesting him for du'as. He doesn't talk much, so you can't really go and have a full-on conversation with him. And this is one of the signs of the Pisces. They don't talk much. He doesn't talk much. You just tell him something, he'll reply back, right? I tried so many times to request him for du'as. I could not look into the eyes of Molana. When I tried looking into the eyes of Molana, like I felt like crying. I felt like something is gonna happen to me. I cannot tell you the, the level of piety this man has when he speaks. We were in one of his bayans, and he was just mentioning something which is very normal. Like it was not emotional. It wasn't something that would make someone cry, but everyone was just crying because of I guess the concern he had in his heart. I can't explain that in words. But Mulana Ahmad Sahib is the Khalifa of him. Khalifa means the next in line after him, right? And to have someone like that um, in this part of the world is such a blessing of Allah. So anyway, to become a friend of Allah, you need to do tazkiyah. Tazkiyah requires an effort, and for you guys, I would highly recommend keeping yourself connected to this institute. You will see the difference when you connect yourself to this institute and taking courses and attending programs. I think Mulana Sab also has some sort of talks, and his wife has talks as well. When you attend that, you will see the difference entering your heart. When that happens, when your heart reaches that level where nothing matters to you, where the only thing matters to you is Allah, where the only thing matters to you is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you will be at a level where Allah will become such a friend where you will say something and Allah will make that possible for you. Right? And that is what I was mentioning 2 days ago about Haji Abdul Wahab. Rahmatullah. Haji Abdul Wahab was the Emir of the effort of Tabligh in Pakistan. Haji Sahib had such concern for deen. He was a wali of Allah. I have no second thoughts about that. Haji Sahib, he was so concerned about the deen of Allah that he would be eating food. He was really old. He was eating food, and his attendant Maulana Fahim Khan, he would be feeding him, and suddenly Haji Sahib's hand would stop. So he would take food from the plate, and instead of taking that morsel in his mouth, his hand would stop midway. And he would say to Maulana Fahim and other scholars, he's like, respected ulama, respected ulama, is there any way a non-believer can enter Jannah? Like he had such concern for for the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that how can everyone enter Jannah, right? So he'll be like, and he has this morsel of food in his hand, right? And he will be like, is there any way a non-believer can enter Jannah? And the ulama would be like, no, no, Shaykh, there is no way, because there's the ayah about it. Haji Sahib would start crying with the morsel of food in his hand for 20 minutes, for 25 minutes, talking about how we can bring these people into the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, this was the level of love he had for Allah and for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At Haji Sahib, we saw so many times that we would tell him something, like, someone would request him for dua, that Haji Sahib, can you please make dua? This is not happening. Haji Sahib would just say, it will happen. And he was such a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah would make that happen. You can be like that as well. I can be like that as well. Haji Sahib was not a prophet. Haji Sahib was not a Sahabi. Haji Sahib died 4 years ago. Okay, so he was one of us. You can be like that. I can be like that, where we will say something and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept it right away as a dua. The only thing we need to do is we need to make sure that our heart has the love and ishq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when that happens, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make you his friend. And when you become the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you have nothing to worry about in dunya and in akhirat. The next thing Allah mentions is the story of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, or two stories of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. The first one is the conversation that Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam had with Namrud, the king. And Namrud used to say that I am God, I am Rabb. So Ibrahim said that no way you're God, no way you're Allah. Okay, and Ibrahim والسلام, would invite him to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one day he had an argument with Namrud, and Namrud said that, look, I am Allah, I am God. Believe in me if you want. If you don't believe in me, I will punish you. So Ibrahim والسلام, had a whole discussion with him. And Ibrahim والسلام, said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life and gives death. So if you can do that, then okay, uh, we can think about it, right? So Namrud, when a person disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah ta'ala puts this veil on his mind, on his brain. So Namrud said, okay, I can do that as well. So what did Namrud do? Namrud brought someone from his jail, and Namrud said that, look, this man, he was supposed to get capital punishment, death, and I'm gonna forgive him. This means that I gave life to someone who was dead. And then he brought someone who was completely innocent and he killed him. And he said, look, I give death. So Ibrahim والسلام, said that, okay, number one, this was extremely stupid. Number two, if you really think you're God, then my Allah, he brings the sun to rise, or the sun rise from the east. He makes the sun rise from the east, and he makes it set in the west. If you're God, make the sun rise from the west and set in the east. Obviously, you couldn't do that, and this is where he punished Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam with fire, and Allah subhanahu wa taala then protected Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. The second story is of Uzair alayhi salatu wasalam, is that Uzair alayhi salatu wasalam, he once visited an area, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to show him the miracle of restoring life. So Uzair alayhi salatu wasalam, he was traveling and he wanted to rest in one neighborhood, one area, and he got off his donkey and he slept. When he slept, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him death, and he gave him death for 100 years. So when he woke up after 100 years, so he slept in the afternoon, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him death for 100 years. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him death, and when he gave him his life back again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him wake up at sunset. So when he woke up, he thought that he slept only for um, that period of day from afternoon till sunset. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then asked him that, how much did you sleep? So he said that, I slept for a day. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then said, no, um, look at your donkey. And the donkey was all bones. So Allah said that he slept for 100 years. Allah gave him his life back, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the bones were scattered, the bones of the donkey. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he brought the bones back and he restored the donkey, and the food that he had with him, the food had not rotted as well. So this was a miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of Uzair alayhi salatu wasalam. The third story Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions is the reassurance Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam asked from Allah. That Allah said, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, that, "Oh Allah, can you please show me how you give life to the dead?" So Allah then asked Ibrahim that, "Ibrahim, don't you believe in me?" He said, "I believe in you, but it's just to satisfy my heart. I just want to see how you do it." So Allah said, "Okay, take four birds and cut them into pieces, take their meat, and place them on different mountains." So Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam did that. He took different birds, he cut them into pieces, and he placed the meat on different parts or different mountains. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Okay, call them." So he called them individually, and instead of flying, all of them came running to Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, displaying the power and the qudrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then from ayah number, which is 261, which is from here, from Mathalul Ladina Yunfiquna, all the way till ayah number 266. Again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about spending for the sake of Allah. And all those things that we discussed earlier, that once you spend for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah ta'ala will increase that and multiply that for you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just reminds that again. But there's one thing that Allah mentions, which is ayah number 264, which is very, very important, that spend in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but don't follow it up with reminders of generosity, okay, nor by causing pain to the other person. What this means is that if you spend on someone, or if you helped someone, don't keep on reminding them over and over and over again. Right? See, if you gave someone some money of your sadaqah, and next day you saw that person wearing a nice watch, don't say to that person that, "Oh, is this the watch from the money I gave you? MashaAllah, my money really helped you." Huh? So don't remind them through this or through other ways. Don't even make them feel that you helped them, right? And I've seen some of my teachers is that when they would help someone, they would avoid meeting them. So they would avoid meeting that person, and we would ask them that, "Sheikh, why aren't you meeting him? You helped him. He should be coming and thanking you." So our teachers would say that if I go in front of him now, it's just fresh. I just gave him money 2 days ago, 3 days ago, a week ago. If I go in front of him now, he's gonna feel embarrassed. And if he feels embarrassed by looking at me, I'm scared that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take my reward away. So when you give someone or when you spend for the sake of Allah, forget it. Like, don't even remember that you gave someone something or you helped someone. This is not only for money, like helping someone in any way. If you help someone, forget about that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you with much more in akhirah. So all these verses are about spending in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then from ayah number 267, um, all the way till ayah number 273. This is about same thing. This is a continuation of charity, of spending for the sake of Allah. But another very special thing Allah mentions in these verses, after encouraging us to spend in His sake, He says, for His sake, He says, الشيطان يعيدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء, which is ayah number 278. So that's not ayah number, which is ayah number 268. Ayah number 268. الشيطان يعيدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, look, shaitan threatens you with poverty, and he tells you to do things which will be displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu ya'idukum maghfiratan minhu wa fadlan. As for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He promises you forgiveness and He promises you blessings. Meaning that shaitan will tell you not to spend for Allah. And that can be sadaqah, zakat. Zakat is very important. Okay, zakat is an obligation on 2.5% of the excess wealth that you have. If it reaches the nisab, if a person does not give zakat, or if he cheats on his zakat, I've heard from our scholars say that it will have a direct effect on his generation. A person who cheats on his zakat, who does not give his zakat, deen will not enter his generations. So very important that zakat, which is an obligation, we fulfill that, right? Because zakat is the right of the poor, and if every Muslim who is wealthy starts giving his zakat, a lot of people who are less privileged, their needs will be taken care of. Once I was sitting in Raiwind, which is the center of Tabligh in Pakistan, with my teacher, and this businessman, a very famous businessman from Pakistan, he came to see my teacher, and he said to my teacher that, and we were discussing zakat and certain other things that were going on in Pakistan at that time. And he said to my teacher, he said, Molana, I know at least 50 families who own more than 100 tola of gold. More than 100 tola of gold is a huge amount. He's like, uh, more not no, sorry, not more than 100 tola. He said about 100 kg, I think, or something, a big amount. He said that I know that they own so much gold, 50 families. And my teacher said to him that if those families start giving zakat properly, the people that have that amount of gold, I'm getting confused between what he said to my teacher. My teacher said that if every family that owns this much amount of gold, if they start giving their zakat properly, you will not find a single person, at least in Lahore, who will not have enough to eat. Like, if every Muslim starts giving their zakat properly, how they are supposed to be giving their zakat, a lot of issues will be taken care of in terms of poverty within the ummah. But the thing is that we look for loopholes, right? We like to cheat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, people come to me close to Ramadan and they're like, Sheikh, my wife owns gold, but I have a debt. So if my wife transfers her gold to my name, I don't have to pay zakat, right? So, like, who are we really cheating? We can't really cheat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So zakat especially, it's an obligation, and it's something that if we don't take care of, then what happens is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes the blessings away from our wealth, and it has an effect on our kids and our generation. So Allah says that shaitan invites you towards poverty. Okay, is that you may think that what shaitan is telling you is going to increase your wealth, but in reality what's going to happen is that it's going to increase your poverty, and shaitan invites you towards things which will displease Allah. As for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever Allah is telling you to do might feel a bit difficult, might seem a bit difficult, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase your wealth because of that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites you towards forgiveness. Then the next verse is from verse number 274 all the way till verse number 283. These verses all talk about finances and financial affairs. So the first thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about is interest. That interest is absolutely haram. Dealing in interest is 101% haram. Taking interest, consuming interest is clearly mentioned in the Quran, but from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we understand that even paying interest is haram. So in these verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about staying away from interest, and Allah says that if you don't stay away from interest, then what's going to happen is you are waging war against Allah and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And if you wage war against Allah and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, पीछे बचा ही क्या है? This what's left behind? There's nothing left behind. You basically destroyed your entire life after waging war against Allah and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So staying away from that. Second thing which Allah mentioned is the laws of debt, of loans. That once when you take loans from someone, or when you have your financial affairs, make sure that you write that down, because if you don't write it down, then financial affairs makes real brothers become enemies. And if you don't record everything properly, so Allah says that whenever you are having some sort of financial affair with someone, any sort of muamalat, uh, anything that involves money or anything that involves any sort of wealth, make sure that it's written down with witnesses, so there are no misunderstandings later on. This is even for family, that once you're dealing with family members, in terms of finances, make sure that everything is written down. And then the final verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, um, so this is basically um, the the assurance of the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam believes in, which has been revealed to him from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And each one believes in Allah, His angels, His scriptures, His messengers. You know, the ayah, آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربي والمؤمنون. And in the last verse, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, Allah does not burden a soul beyond that which what it is capable of. So what this means is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in a difficulty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you sabr as well. You just need to find that sabr somewhere, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never put you in a state or in a condition where it will be difficult for you to cope or manage. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows our capacity, and whatever um, test is putting us through, we have the capacity to go through it. We just need to find that sabr. And then there are du'as that we make to Allah. رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا, that don't hold us accountable if you forget, if you make a mistake. رَبَّنَا وَلَا تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْنَا إِسْرًا كَمَا حَمَلْتَهُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِنَا. Ya Allah, do not place such a burden on us as you had placed on those before us. رَبَّنَا وَلَا تُحَمِّلْنَا مَا لَا طَاقَةَ لَنَا بِهِ. Ya Allah, do not impose on us that which we have not the strength to bear. وَاعْفُ عَنَّا وَاغْفِرْ لَنَا وَارْحَمْنَا. Pardon us, forgive us, have mercy on us. Anta Maulana, you are our protector. Fansurna ala al-qawm al-kafirin, so assist us against the disbelievers, meaning that against what they plot against us and the environment that is around us. Ya Allah, protect us from the environment of disbelief and help us follow the environment of Tawheed, of Sunnah, and the way of Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And with this, we end Surah Al-Baqarah. If you have any questions, you can send me those questions and I'll answer. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Can you please repeat the ayah which we have to memorize? Ayatul Kursi, which is the second ayah of the third juz. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. Um, these verses, this is one verse, is protection from everything. So every Muslim should memorize this. Uh, what must the iddah be for a woman who works outside of her home for a living, or someone who doesn't have family to help her with outside chores? So this comes under necessity. So in that case, the woman will be allowed to go to work and come back right after work. So she wouldn't be allowed to go and socialize or to go to parties and things like that. She can go and work because she needs to make ends meet, right? And she can come back right after work. You mentioned yesterday that if a husband orders his wife not to wear niqab, she can listen to him. You also said that there's a difference in opinion about it. Can you explain a bit more? I thought it's mandatory for women to cover everything. No, there is a difference of opinion between niqab. I did mention that yes, there is an opinion that niqab is mandatory. I personally follow that opinion, but there is an opinion out there that says that face is not part of satar, so a woman doesn't have to cover it. The reason why I said this was because you do not want to cause a fight between a couple based on something which has a difference of opinion. Something which is a difference of opinion, you do not want to make that a means of divorce, a means of fight at home. So if the husband, you try to educate the husband and you tell him that it's important, but if he doesn't agree with it, instead of fighting with him every single day, you can take the second opinion of not wearing the niqab. Tazkiyah is cleansing your heart. Is basically taking out all those negative things from your heart, love of this dunya outside of your heart, and instill the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your heart. So how you wash your clothes, right? Washing the heart is tazkiyah. That's basically what tazkiyah is. Is makeup haram, meaning putting it on when one goes out? Yes, if you go out and strangers are going to see you, men who are not mahram to you, then it is haram. Makeup is only permissible when um, women or your maharim, meaning the people who can see you with makeup only, then it's permissible. If you're going to go out without covering your face, obviously everyone is going to see you, and that will be impermissible. Okay, Ustada, do you have any pointers for staying away from interest in today's world? I'm pretty sure my voice gave it out. I'm not Ustada. Okay, so I'm with that. But do you have any pointers for staying away from interest in today's world? Everyone is going to have a little bit of interest in this world, right? If you don't have interest in today's world, then life is going to get very, very difficult, right? Um, so everyone is allowed to have some sort of interest, but you need to make sure that interest does not overtake your obligation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? The best way to do that is just have this idea in your head that we live in this world, the world should not live in us. Okay. Um, so we need to make sure that whatever the love of this dunya should be very limited, right? That I need to earn from my family so they can have a comfortable life, so they do not go outside and beg from others. That can only happen when I have some sort of interest in this world. Just don't let that interest overtake you, overpower you. When that happens, then that's a problem. I hope that understood the question. I sound similar to Sheikh Ahmed Saab. Wow, that's an honor for me. Do you teach classes as well? I do, but I don't teach online much. I teach locally. This is something I just did in Ramadan. Sheikh, I heard a person who said that you can't ask Allah for everything in sujood in your language. You can only ask Him in Arabic. Is that really true? Yes. In the sajda of salat, the dua should only be in Arabic. Okay. Um, One way to do that is because sajda is where we're closer to Allah, right? So what you can do is right after you finish your salam, you finish your nafil, you finish your tahajjud, whatever salah you're praying. Right after you finish your salah, you can go straight into sajda, and then you can make dua in your language. So that sajda will not be the sajda of salah, but that will be the sajda of outside of salah, but you can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala um, in your language during that sajda. Uh, can we do tazkiyah by doing dhikr? Yes, dhikr is very good for doing tazkiyah. So you keep on doing dhikr, send durood and salawat upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What is one thing that takes us closer to Rasulullah? How do we get to see him in dream? Can we? Yes, you can see him in dream, but there's something that Sheikh Hussein Ahmad rahmatullahi mentioned. Someone came to him and asked him that, can we see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How can we see Rasulullah in our dream? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam then said, sorry, Hussein Ahmad Madin rahmatullahi then said that I can give you something that you will recite and you will see Rasulullah in your dream. But and Hussein al-Madini rahimullah was a Sayyid, right? So he was from the family of Rasulullah. So he said that I don't have the courage to see Rasulullah in my dream because how will I answer if Rasulullah asks me about my actions, right? But that's something else I just mentioned. But yeah, if you recite continuous durood upon Rasulullah, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the opportunity to see a vision of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Um, what steps can one take towards tazkiyah, zikr, durud upon Rasulullah, connecting yourself to a sheikh, taking classes? All of these will help. Reciting Quran, reciting the tafsir of the Quran, all of this will help. Please suggest any good books for kids, upbringing for children. The stories of the Sahaba, uh, the Hayatul Sahaba is written by Sheikh Yusuf Kandhlawi. That has stories of the Sahaba. Try to read that yourself and then explain that to your kids. That is really, really good. Um, You recited a long dua yesterday. Did you share it with the group? Yes, I did share it with the group. I will try to share it again. Yes, the question that you sent me yesterday about nature versus nurture. Okay, so it's a very long answer, but I'll try to summarize it. Nature versus nurture. The question you sent me, uh, well, necessarily it doesn't really have to do anything with Islam in the beginning. Nature versus nurture is more of a psychological question. Okay, and what this means is that a person's or the quality that a person has, um, is it trained because of his nature or is it because of nurture, because of the environment around it? And this then carries on to free will, right? And that's where Islam comes in, when people bring in the argument that why does Islam encourage free will, or there has to be no free will because of nature versus nurture. So I'm not going to go into much detail because it's going to confuse you a lot because I don't know what context your friend told you. But nature versus nurture, Islam says that look, by nature everyone is a Muslim, and the proof of that is the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? That every child is born on fitrah, right? And fitrah is Islam. But then nurture has a huge impact on a person's life. Like nature and nurture, these are some things beyond your control, right? Nature, you're born on fitrah. The environment around you, you don't have any control over it, right? The country you're born in or the family you're born in. And that is where free will comes in. That is where Islam says that free will comes in. That is where Allah says that free will comes in. That you're going to have your nature, which is fitrah, but you're going to have nurture, the environment which corrupted or whatever, takes you on whatever path you have. But Allah at the same time has given you free will. That from your free will, you break free from the negative effects of nurture and you follow the path of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so I guess this should be enough to answer your question. Because if you go more into detail, it's going to really confuse you without context. Is it permissible to read Sirah without any teacher? Yes, it is. The best kitab, the best book is The Sealed Nectar. It is very, very good. Try to get that. Can you break through the nature? Eventually, you will break through nature because of nurture, because of the environment. That's how people become disbelievers, right? They break through the nature because of the nurture, and then they end up somewhere else. You can break through nature. That is where free will comes in, is that you need to make sure that you do not fall into nurture to the extent where you break away from your fitrah. My husband is asking me to get a rhinoplasty. Am I allowed? This is making us argue unnecessarily because I refuse, thinking it's haram. Uh, I can't answer you like that. The best would be to speak to a local mufti because these things require a lot of details, right? So I don't know the context behind it. So please speak to a local mufti. Please pray for my friend who is a disbeliever. May Allah guide her. In the state of impurity, can we use Quran in our phone screen? See, in the state of impurity, you can't recite the Quran. So so if you're in the state of impurity, what are you going to do by using the Quran on the screen? Because at the end of the day, you cannot recite the Quran. If you say state of impurity as in the major impurity, but if you're saying state of impurity as in you don't have wudu, then without wudu, yes, you can use the Quran without wudu on the phone. I guess I answered all the questions. I don't think any questions left, is there? No. We have 3 more minutes, so if you do have any questions, you can send, inshallah, I'll try to answer. Zabur was given to Dawood alayhi salatu wassalam. So it was revealed upon Dawood alayhi salam. Is revenge justified in Islam? Depends. What kind of revenge are you talking about? But it's not recommended. Uh, allowed or not, you need more context. The dua, okay, just give me 1 minute. Let me try to get that dua. Okay. Let me see. It's here somewhere. One of my friend is a non-Muslim. She's very curious about Islam, but my parents have told me I shouldn't be giving her any dawah. I feel your parents are telling you because you're very young. So then in that case, yes. What is the best advice that I would give to the youth is please try to understand your worth. Please try to understand who you are. You are very special people. You were loved by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had hopes in you. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's expecting to see you on the day of judgment as his ummatis. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's going to be really happy to see you on the day of judgment when you see Allah when you meet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as true ummatis. You need to understand who you really are. Okay, you have not been created for whatever this whole world is doing. Okay, you have not been created to chase relationships or drugs and all of that. You've been brought into existence to carry the flags of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So understand your worth, okay, and live your life according to that. I've sent the dua. I hope it reached all of you. So this is a dua I mentioned. Um, inshallah, time is up, inshallah, and I'll see you all tomorrow at the same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.